How millionaires think differently. Mental models that create wealth. Most people chase money. A few people build it. And the rarest, those who keep it, multiply it, and pass it on, don't do it with effort. They do it with thinking. This video is not about strategies. It's not about shortcuts. It's not about motivation. It's about mental architecture. About rewiring the core operating system that makes wealth inevitable, regardless of where you start, who raised you, or what the market looks like. You're about to enter the inner world of the millionaire mind. Not the cliches, not the tweets, but the truth. We'll break down the invisible mental models that separate high performers from the reactive majority. We'll dismantle toxic beliefs around time, effort, money, risk, opportunity, failure, and value, and we'll replace them with the models that real builders use behind closed doors. Because millionaires don't just work differently. They see differently. They decide differently. They respond differently. And that difference lives in the models they live by. You'll learn why most people stay broke even when they make more money. How millionaires make decisions in minutes that others avoid for years. Why wealth has nothing to do with hustle and everything to do with leverage. How to replace emotional reactivity with mental structure. And how to build a life where your thinking does the heavy lifting daily. This won't be motivational fluff. It will be surgical, direct, transformative. And if you stay to the end, you won't just understand how millionaires think. You'll start thinking like one. Let's begin. Block 1, mental engineering. The practical thinking models that millionaires use daily. You don't rise to wealth by doing more. You rise by thinking better. You escape the trap of mediocrity not through hustle, but through mental clarity. The kind that reorders chaos, eliminates waste, and makes powerful decisions under pressure. Millionaires don't just think positive. They think precisely. They don't obsess over effort. They optimize impact. And what makes them dangerous isn't their intelligence. It's the models they've installed in their operating system. The frameworks, the filters, the rules that run quietly in the background while the rest of the world overreacts. The first model, first order versus second order thinking. Most people think about what's directly in front of them. A job, a paycheck, a problem, a goal. But millionaires train themselves to think past the first layer. Always. Not, if I make more money, I'll be free. But if I increase income without increasing structure, I become a prisoner of my own success. Not, this opportunity looks good, but what are the long-term compounding costs hidden behind this decision? This is second-order thinking, asking what happens next. What ripple does this choice create? What second and third consequences will I have to live with? The average person sees gain. The millionaire sees trade-offs. That's why they move slower at first, but cleaner long-term. Their wins aren't accidents. They're outcomes of thinking past the obvious. Second model, inversion. Instead of only asking, how do I succeed? The millionaire also asks, how do I fail? And then they remove those variables. First, before launching, they ask, what would destroy trust here? What would confuse the customer? What would make this team break? They plan not just for success, they engineer against collapse. Inversion is the mental discipline of learning from destruction. Most people avoid failure. Millionaires study it. They walk around it. They deconstruct it. And then they build systems that make it almost impossible. Third model, asymmetric risk. Millionaires don't avoid risk. They pursue it. When the downside is capped and the upside is infinite, this is how they make moves others fear. Because they know that most people stay broke not because of risk, but because they misunderstand it. They think big leaps require big losses. The millionaire looks for tiny losses with massive reward potential. That means launching fast, testing small, learning quickly. It means asking, what can I risk right now that won't destroy me, but might unlock the next level? This is how they outpace competition. Not through speed, but through intelligent bets. They lose 100 times, but only need one asymmetric win to shift their entire trajectory. Fourth model, opportunity cost. They don't ask, can I do this? They ask, what will this cost me if I say yes? Because every yes is a no to something else, to focus, to momentum, to peace, to freedom. This is why millionaires look like they do less, but get more done. Because they don't measure value by how busy something looks. They measure by how expensive it is to your future if you get distracted. Their attention is sacred. Their calendar is not negotiable. Every commitment is filtered through this model. Fifth model, compounding leverage. This model governs how they think about effort. They don't trade time for money. They build systems that compound value over time. Instead of selling hours, they build assets, brands, audiences, software, IP, teams, trust. Things that do the work without them. Things that scale without stress. This is why they'll spend 10 hours building a system that saves 100. Why they'll write a single piece of content that lives for years. Why they obsess over clarity. Because clarity scales. If it doesn't compound, they question it. If it does, they go all in. Sixth model, mental subtraction. While the world tells you to add more strategy, more tools, more growth, the millionaire asks, what can I subtract? What's creating noise? What's stealing energy? What's slowing down decision? Mental subtraction is how they build clean systems, sharp brands, and focused teams. They understand simplicity is the ultimate multiplier. You don't scale complexity. You scale clarity. Seventh model, the 85% rule. Perfection is the enemy of momentum. Most people stall waiting for perfect. Millionaires ship at 85%. Because 85% built and launched is worth infinitely more than 100% planned and imagined. They know that clarity comes from movement. Feedback lives in action. Growth is data-driven. And if you wait for perfect, you'll watch others pass you by while you're still polishing. They push, adjust, optimize later. Eighth model, constraint thinking. They don't get overwhelmed by lack of resources. They weaponize constraints. Limited budget? Simplify the offer. Small team? Sharpen communication. Limited time? Tighten scope. Constraints force creativity. They are not obstacles. They are refining fire. The millionaire doesn't complain about what's missing. They extract power from it. Ninth model, the observer frame. When emotions rise, logic collapses. Millionaires train themselves to observe before reacting. They ask, what's really happening here? What would I see if I wasn't personally involved? They pull out, zoom out, rise above. They observe their own thoughts like a strategist. This is how they avoid drama, avoid overreaction, avoid impulsive decisions. They don't let emotion run the company. They let structure run it. And the 10th model, who, not how. When they want to scale, they don't ask, how do I do this? They ask, who already knows how, and how do I bring them in? This is why they move faster, with less stress. They don't spend months figuring things out from scratch. They find the right person, create a win-win, and stay in their zone of genius. Who, not how, turns effort into elevation. It transforms a lone wolf into a commander. These models don't live in bookshelves. They live in behavior. You see them in how millionaires respond to setbacks, how they move through complexity, how they hire, fire, scale, pause, launch, recover, recalibrate, how they think under fire, under silence, under scrutiny, and now they can live in you. Because mental models are not personality. They are installed software, and you don't need to be born with them. You can choose them, practice them, sharpen them, live them, starting now. Block 2, the inner framework, how consciousness shapes the millionaire mind. The difference between a millionaire and the average person is not just knowledge. It's not access. It's not even opportunity. It's consciousness, the level at which they perceive, interpret, and respond to the world. Most people think from survival. The millionaire thinks from design. Most people build from reaction. The millionaire builds from intention. The difference is not intellectual. It's existential. It is a shift in identity, in presence, in the very source of decision. This is why you can't copy a millionaire strategy and get the same results. Because strategy without state is empty. Because how you think is always shaped by where you think from. Most people are trapped in a frame they don't even know exists. A frame that says, money is hard, I have to earn it the hard way. Success means sacrifice. Stability is safety. Don't ask for too much. Don't outshine. Wait until it's perfect. Play it safe. More effort means more worth. And so they build lives of exhaustion. Businesses rooted in overcompensation. Calendars full of obligation. Identities tied to productivity. And a quiet, aching fear that if they ever stop grinding, it will all fall apart. The millionaire has exited that frame, not because they're smarter, but because they've questioned the script. They've burned the rule book that says pain equals proof. They've rewritten the code. They've chosen to operate from a place where clarity trumps confusion, where simplicity beats drama, and where power is not performance, it's presence. They don't wake up thinking, what must I do to survive today? They wake up thinking, what do I choose to build, to shape, to refine? Because they are not running from poverty. They are responding to purpose. This shift changes everything. It changes how they experience time. Time is no longer something to fill. It is something to consecrate. They protect their time not out of fear, but out of reverence. Because time is energy. Time is vision. Time is a temple where results are born. It changes how they see money. Money is not a trophy. It is a tool, a symbol of alignment, a reflection of value delivered, systems optimized, boundaries honored, trust built. They don't worship it. They partner with it. They circulate it with intelligence. They receive it without guilt, and they let it go without fear, because they've healed the relationship between value and love, between visibility and worth, between receiving and deserving. They no longer build to prove. They build to transmit. Now look at how they hold failure. The average mind avoids it, fears it, creates entire systems to protect the ego from ever being wrong. The millionaire sees failure as a mirror, a friend, a filter for refinement. They don't just tolerate failure. They mine it. They extract pattern. They build structure. They adjust frequency because they are not loyal to being right. They are loyal to becoming wise. This is what makes their growth exponential. They do not confuse self-worth with current results. They do not collapse when outcomes wobble. They do not panic when the path bends, because their identity is not built on the external. It's built on alignment. They have graduated from external control. They don't try to manipulate every variable. They trust rhythm. They trust intelligence. They trust timing, not as a passive act, but as a powerful posture. They lead with decisions, not attachments. They act from clarity, not urgency. They scale from vision, not comparison. Even their ambition has matured. They're no longer chasing a number. They're expanding a signal. They're no longer obsessed with the next level. They're committed to depth, to sustainability, to wholeness. This is what most people miss. They think wealth is strategy, that it lives in spreadsheets, that it's about hustle, luck, access, branding. But wealth, true, sustained, meaningful wealth, starts with state, and state is a choice. It is trained in silence. It is anchored in presence. It is built through daily agreements with truth. When you change your state, you change your questions. When you change your questions, you change your filters. When you change your filters, you change your perception. And perception is where your entire life flows from. This is what the millionaire knows. That mental models matter, but the mind behind them matters more. That decisions shape results, but the consciousness behind the decision shapes destiny. And that wealth, in the end, is not just a bank balance. It is a vibration, a presence, a consequence of deep clarity. So now you choose, will you think as the world trained you to think? From fear, scarcity, and ego, or will you rise into a new frame? One where you are the source, not the seeker. One where wealth is no longer something to chase, but something you simply become. That shift begins now. Block 3, high-impact thinking in motion. Daily applications of the millionaire mind. Ideas don't build wealth. Execution does. But execution without thinking is chaos. And thinking without structure is noise. The millionaire builds a bridge between vision and action through thinking patterns that live in motion, through embedded mental models that guide their behavior every single day, without needing to be consciously recalled. These models are not just theories. They are reflexes. Let's walk through how they live. Morning, mental positioning before movement, before the day begins, before the first email is checked, before any decision is made. The millionaire sets position, not through affirmations, through alignment. They ask one question: who do I need to be today to create what I'm building? That question activates intention. It overrides reactivity. It doesn't start the day with tasks. It starts with identity. And immediately, every choice is filtered. Do I train this morning? Yes, because I'm someone who commands energy. Do I skip the call that doesn't serve? Yes, because I'm someone who protects attention. Do I take 15 minutes to plan? Yes, because clarity before execution is how you lead. This is not discipline. This is identity-driven behavior. Decision-making, clarity over comfort. The millionaire doesn't waste hours debating. They move through filters. Is this aligned with my long-term vision? What is the worst-case scenario if I act now? Does this create compounding value or temporary relief? If it's not aligned, it's a no. If the downside is survivable and the upside is meaningful, they move. If it's urgent but not important, it gets deleted or delegated. They do not emotionally process every decision. They filter it, fast, clean, without residue. Time management, anchored, not filled. Their calendar is not a wall of random blocks. It's a blueprint of intention. Creation before consumption. Deep work before distraction. Thinking time built in every week. Buffer blocks to absorb the unexpected. Planning time on Friday, not Monday. They don't treat time as a container for busyness. They treat it as a lever for precision. And every task must earn its space. Every meeting must have an outcome. Every hour is sacred real estate. Handling emotion, respond, don't react. When a client criticizes, a launch flops, or a competitor moves faster, most people spiral. The millionaire doesn't. They pause, breathe, and shift perspective. What does this trigger in me? Is this feedback or projection? Where is the lesson I can use today, not later? Because emotion is not the enemy. Emotion is data, and data is gold if you can stay still enough to read it. They lead themselves first. They don't let urgency hijack standards. They move clean, even under fire. Problem solving, subtraction before addition. Most people try to solve problems by adding more tools, more offers, more meetings, more noise. The millionaire solves by subtraction. What if we remove this layer? What would this look like if it were easy? What if we said no to 80% of this and scaled the 20% that works? This isn't minimalism. It's operational intelligence. And it creates speed, not the reckless kind, the surgical kind. Communication, signal over sound. Every word is a transaction. Millionaires protect attention by communicating with intention. They don't write 10-paragraph emails. They send one-line decisions. They don't say, "Let me know your thoughts." They say, "Choose between option A or B, deadline, 2 p.m. They don't waste calls with vague updates. They enter with clarity. They exit with action. And in public communication, social, podcast, stage, they lead with value. They don't post for validation. They publish to build trust at scale. One post equals one shift. One story equals one conversion. One idea equals one invitation. Scaling systems. Automate thinking before action. Millionaires don't just automate tasks. They automate thinking. They don't ask, "How do I write this email again?" They say, "Here's the template. Refine it once. Reuse forever." They don't ask, "What should I delegate?" They say, "Here's my weekly delegation doc. Update it every Friday." They install templates, frameworks, decision trees. So their bandwidth isn't burned on repetition. It's saved for innovation. End of day, compression and review. They don't let the day end with mental clutter. Before they sleep, inbox zero, delegation cleared, reflection done, calendar updated, insights logged. They ask, what created energy today? What drained it? What decision did I delay and why? What's the single highest leverage move for tomorrow? Because every day is a feedback loop. And millionaires don't wait for quarterly reviews. They optimize daily. Because growth is not a surprise. It's the reward of thinking cleanly in real time. This is how millionaires move. With fewer decisions, cleaner logic, faster pivots, less drama, more pattern recognition, more elevation, more mental elegance. And now, so can you. Install the models. Use them daily. Refine them weekly. Make them instinct. And eventually, you won't need to think like a millionaire. You'll be one. Block 4. The mind that holds it. Why wealth requires inner sophistication. The mind that builds wealth is not the same mind that can hold it. Because wealth, real wealth, doesn't just demand skill. It demands sophistication. Not sophistication in appearance. Not sophistication in education. But the kind of internal structure that can contain power without collapsing. That can command complexity without losing clarity. That can sit inside abundance without dissolving into fear. The truth is this. Most people don't lose wealth because of external forces. They lose it because their mind was never designed to carry it. It was designed to chase it, to prove something, to validate identity, to repair ego. And so when it arrives, they sabotage, not because they're weak, because they're underbuilt. Wealth exposes your inner frame. It amplifies your beliefs. It magnifies your fears. It accelerates your patterns. And if the mind has not been trained to expand with grace, it will turn that abundance into pressure, distortion, and fragmentation. This is why true millionaires don't just study money. They study self. They understand that wealth will not feel safe to a nervous system addicted to instability. That holding power will feel threatening to a mind addicted to chaos. That being seen will feel violent to someone who's never healed their visibility wounds. So they do the real work, not just on strategy. On structure. They rewire the relationship with control so they can delegate without anxiety. They heal the fear of rest so they can scale without addiction. They confront the fear of loss so they can invest without paralysis. Because the mind that holds wealth must operate with truth under pressure. And truth requires inner congruence. Congruence between what you want and what you believe you deserve. Between what you say and what you live. Between the future you envision and the actions you take in private. This congruence is rare because it cannot be bought. It must be built. It is forged in silence. When you look at your calendar and see misalignment, and fix it. When you feel triggered and don't react. When you feel scarcity and choose generosity. When you feel behind and stay calm. Every one of these moments rewires the nervous system. And that rewiring is a foundation for wealth that doesn't just come, but stays. Because the immature mind seeks money for identity. But the mature mind holds money with neutrality. It doesn't attach worth to income. It doesn't chase approval through achievement. It doesn't collapse when numbers dip. It doesn't rush to fix emotion with more doing. It holds, breathes, stabilizes, returns to intention. Because a mature mind understands, money is a mirror. If I don't like what I see, I don't need more of it. I need to clean the reflection. This is why millionaires meditate, why they journal, why they sit with stillness. Not because it's trendy, but because internal order precedes external prosperity. They build inner containers before building outer ones. They create space inside themselves to hold discomfort without collapse, ambition without anxiety, ambition without distortion. And that space is sacred. It is where innovation happens, where decisions land, where intuition is heard. Without it, all strategy is noise. This is the real edge. The average mind chases more. The millionaire mind deepens capacity. It doesn't seek speed, it seeks stability. It doesn't worship growth, it honors integrity. This is why their moves look effortless, why their words carry weight, why their businesses breathe instead of grind. Because what you're witnessing is not just intelligence, it's internal sovereignty. A mind that knows who it is. That doesn't panic in silence. That doesn't depend on applause. That doesn't outsource direction. That doesn't flinch at pressure. That doesn't dilute vision to be liked. And from that mind flows everything. Clean communication, tight execution, aligned offers, magnetic branding. grounded leadership. So, if you're wondering why strategy alone hasn't created the breakthrough, look here at your own ability to sit with stillness, at your tolerance for power, at your response to success, at your fear of being seen, at your relationship with enough. Because mental sophistication is not luxury, it is the foundation. And if you want to build something that lasts, that scales, that ripples, it starts not with what you do, but with what you believe you are capable of holding without collapse. Refine that, and the money will match it. Block 5, tactical filters. How millionaires use mental models to eliminate, prioritize, and scale with precision. Millionaires don't just think differently. They filter differently. They don't make better decisions by accident. They make fewer, cleaner, more powerful decisions because their filters are sharper than everyone else's. They don't operate from a list of to-dos. They operate from a system of no's. Let's break down how those filters work in real life and how you can install them immediately. Filter 1, people, energy over history. The average person keeps people around because of shared past. The millionaire builds teams, friendships, and partnerships based on shared future. They don't ask, how long have I known them? They ask, does this person amplify clarity or drain it? Can I trust their decision-making under pressure? Do they grow in my presence or shrink it? This is why their circles feel different. Fewer people, cleaner energy, no obligation, no resentment, just forward movement. Filter 2, information, signal over noise. Millionaires do not consume everything. They consume strategically. They don't binge news. They don't scroll for answers. They don't jump from mentor to mentor every week. They ask, what signal am I tuning to today? What information, if fully understood, would change how I move? They read with application in mind. They listen with integration in mind. If it doesn't create traction, it gets deleted. If it repeats what they already know, it gets skipped. Because clarity multiplies when distraction dies. Filter 3, time, return over duration. They don't say yes to something because it only takes 10 minutes. They ask, what does this 10-minute task cost my energy and flow today? What could I do in that same time that compound for months? Every calendar entry gets filtered through. Does this move the business forward? Does this deepen my relationships? Does this protect or deplete my focus? If it's not a yes, it's a no, because time spent is attention invested, and the ROI of attention is everything. Filter 4, decisions, reversibility first. Millionaires don't waste hours on decisions that can be reversed. They ask, is this high impact and irreversible? Take time. Is this low impact and reversible? Decide now. This single model alone saves them thousands of hours. It prevents paralysis. It creates flow. And it trains them to move faster with less regret. Filter 5, opportunities, cost of yes. Instead of asking, what could I gain? They ask, what does this cost me if I say yes? What gets delayed? What gets diluted? What habit gets broken? What identity gets compromised? They treat opportunity like real estate. If it doesn't raise the value of the whole system, it's not allowed in. Filter 6, content, value over volume. They don't publish just to stay visible. They publish to lead. They ask, what truth can I say today that cuts through the noise? What belief can I shift that moves someone forward? What story, if told with clarity, builds trust in 30 seconds? Every post, podcast, email, reel they filter through, is this aligned with my identity and my offer? If not, it doesn't go out. They don't dilute their message just to get clicks, because trust scales faster than reach. Filter 7, tasks, owner or operator. They don't wake up asking, what needs to get done? They ask, what am I doing today that someone else could own? What task is stealing decision energy from the mission? What would break if I stopped doing it? They build SOPs. They build people. They train autonomy. Because they're not trying to do more. They're trying to do less, better. Filter 8, goals, aligned or inherited. Not every goal is yours. Millionaires know this. So they ask, did I choose this goal or did I inherit from culture, mentors, ego? Does this vision fit me? Or does it impress others? They are not building for applause. They are building for alignment, because a misaligned goal drains even if you succeed. Filter 9. Feedback, pattern, or projection. They don't take every opinion personally. They filter feedback. Is this a one-off or a pattern? Is this truth or someone else's wound? Is this coming from someone I trade lives with? They extract signal and discard static. This keeps their decisions clean and their self-worth intact. Filter 10. Environment, directional or distracting. They don't tolerate environments that pull them backward. Does this room reflect the future or anchor the past? Does this home, office, feed, group elevate my decisions or lower them? They curate space like a weapon. Because environment is not neutral, it either compounds your direction or corrodes it. This is how millionaires scale with precision, by refusing to let the unfiltered world hijack their thinking. Their success is not made from more effort. It's made from fewer inputs, cleaner execution, tighter calibration. So, you want to move like a millionaire? Build your filters. Then enforce them without apology. Because clarity is not just a luxury. It's your leverage. Block 6. The alternate reality. Living in a different mental universe. Millionaires don't just think differently. They live in a completely different mental universe. It's not a mindset. It's not a strategy. It's a reality, designed, refined, and maintained with unwavering discipline. A private world inside the mind where everything is filtered through purpose, clarity, and sovereignty. And most people will never understand it, because most people live in a reactive world. They react to emotions, to emails, to notifications, to opinions, to prices, to trends, to fear. But the millionaire doesn't live in that world. They've stepped out. They've architected a new one where they are not at the mercy of input, but the author of meaning. This is the secret nobody tells you. The higher you go in business, leadership, and wealth, the quieter it becomes. Because fewer people live in that altitude of mental clarity. Most people crave freedom, but resist the silence required to access it. They want success, but refuse the stillness required to hear what success actually means for them. But millionaires sit in that stillness, not because it's fun, but because truth lives there. They don't avoid discomfort. They listen to it. They don't numb uncertainty. They translate it. And slowly, over time, they exit the mental matrix of the masses. In that matrix, urgency rules. Fear masquerades as logic. Validation replaces vision. Volume pretends to be value. Hustle is worshipped. Silence is feared. Productivity is confused with purpose. But in the world the millionaire has built, none of that holds power. In this alternate reality, clarity is king. Simplicity is sacred. Energy is currency. Direction is non-negotiable. Truth is more valuable than perception. Rhythm matters more than speed. Thoughtfulness outranks noise. Depth replaces performance. Identity is chosen, not inherited. This isn't arrogance. It's liberation. Because when you live in that world, the opinions of others lose gravity. You no longer shape yourself to fit expectations. You stop bending to algorithms. You start building from the source of truth, not from the pressure to be impressive. And that truth creates infrastructure, internal systems to process fear, rituals that restore clarity, questions that redirect doubt, relationships that refine vision, boundaries that preserve momentum, silence that sharpens creativity, decision-making frameworks that eliminate noise. This is the inner cathedral of the millionaire's mind, a structure more valuable than any office, brand, or team, because everything external is a reflection of this inner temple. Now here's the paradox. The more they build this inner world, the more powerful their external results, not because they chase them harder, but because their movements are cleaner, their message is tighter, their energy is magnetic, their posture is calm. People feel them before they understand them, and that feeling creates conversion, trust, loyalty, and respect that can't be hacked. But this mental universe is not automatic. It must be protected, daily, with fierce intentionality. Millionaires protect this world like sacred ground. They reject relationships that pollute their frequency. They avoid content that muddies their signal. They eliminate obligations that pull them off course. They question inherited beliefs. They stop explaining their clarity to the confused because their mental space is not for rent. It is the engine of everything they build. And here's the most profound truth. They are not addicted to growth. They are committed to alignment. They don't scale because they hate where they are. They scale because their internal world has expanded and the external must follow. They don't speak to prove they're right. They speak to call others into this dimension, into this clearer, cleaner, freer way of living and building. That is why people follow them, not for tactics, but for the transmission. Because the millionaire doesn't sell information. They transmit a frequency. And when you step into their presence, through a post, a conversation, a product, you feel the difference. So the question is not, how do I become a millionaire? The real question is, can I leave the world I was trained to think in and build a new one inside myself? Because if you can, your time will flow differently. Your clients will show up differently. Your offers will convert differently. Your leadership will land differently. Your body will move differently. Your choices will cost less. Your words will carry weight. Your growth will feel clean. And money will not be the goal. It will be the byproduct of a mind that no longer lives in distortion. A mind that has come home. A mind that has remembered its authority. A mind that has exited the matrix and started building heaven from within. Block 7. Leading in the fire. How millionaires think when stakes are high. A crisis doesn't build a leader. It reveals one. And the difference between a reactive business owner and a grounded millionaire is never more obvious than when tension rises, when stakes are real, when eyes are watching, and when silence becomes pressure. This is where mental models move from theory to armor. Real leadership is not shouting louder. It's thinking cleaner. Let's walk through how millionaires think and move when the heat is on. 1. Conflict with team, clarity before emotion. A team member underperforms. A deadline slips. Trust is bent. Most people confront out of emotion. Millionaires confront from structure. First thought, what is the root, not the surface of this issue? Is this a skill gap, a clarity gap, or a values mismatch? They don't react. They diagnose. Then they communicate with precision. What happened? What was expected? What the impact is? What will change moving forward? No blame. No drama. Just calibration. Because they understand chaos thrives in vagueness. But leadership lives in specificity. 2. Pressure moments. Expand time. Shrink emotion. When revenue drops, tech fails, or clients panic, the average mind compresses. Millionaires expand. They pause, not from paralysis, but from posture. They ask, what is true right now? What are the 3 most important levers I can pull today? What would the calmest version of me do next? They zoom out. They slow the heartbeat. They let noise pass and act from signal. This is not passivity. It's tactical delay to protect clarity. 3. Difficult decisions. Principles over popularity. Should we let someone go? Shut down an offer? Raise prices? Fire a partner? Millionaires don't lead by consensus. They lead by conviction. They don't ask, will this make people happy? They ask, does this protect the mission? When necessary, they deliver truth that stings. But they do it clean, without venom, without hiding. Because protecting trust sometimes means saying what others won't. First, clearly and directly. 4. Strategic pivots. Rebuild from core, not panic. When a launch underperforms or a market shifts, amateurs flail. Millionaires refactor. They go straight to core questions. Does the audience still need this? Is the offer still aligned? What assumptions are outdated? They don't patch over cracks. They rebuild architecture. And they don't waste time explaining to the outside world. They focus on internal truth, then move forward publicly only when integrity is restored. 5. Overwhelm. Reduce surface area of chaos. When everything feels on fire, the untrained mind multitasks. Millionaires narrow. They immediately reduce their surface area of concern. 3 key outcomes. one decision per hour, one conversation per issue, one plan to move. They simplify underweight, not by escaping work, but by sharpening focus. Because overwhelm is not from pressure, it's from diluted direction. 6. Emotional conversations, identity anchored in leadership. Whether it's a client breakdown, a team resignation, or a co-founder disagreement, emotion will show up. But the millionaire doesn't aim to win arguments. They aim to protect the field. They breathe deeper. They listen longer. They speak slower. Because they've trained for this. They know that the person with the cleanest nervous system leads the room. They hold tone. They anchor safety. They name truth. And when needed, they close loops fast, with love, with edge. 7. Noise from the outside, frame before response. A bad review, a betrayal, a competitor throws shade, a partner leaves. Millionaires don't engage from wounded ego. They pause. Is this noise or signal? Do I need to respond or reframe? What do I protect? Reputation or frequency? Sometimes they say nothing. Sometimes they speak. But every move is from grounded intent, not reactive identity. 8. Burnout signals. Intervene early, not late. They don't wait to collapse before adjusting. They track energy like revenue. Am I resenting what I once loved? Is my calendar punishing or aligned? What must I drop to breathe again? They make hard edits, not because they're failing, but because they understand that capacity must be preserved if legacy is to last. 9. Feedback loops accelerate signal, eliminate static. They don't chase applause or avoid criticism. They crave accurate feedback. So they ask tight questions. Where did I lose clarity? What would have made this 20% better? Where's friction still hidden? They don't wait quarterly. They check weekly. They optimize daily. Because when feedback loops are clean, growth is exponential. 10. Holding the standard, protecting the invisible. Leadership is lonely, especially when no one sees the weight you carry. Millionaires hold the standard even when no one claps. They hold it in team culture, in the tone of an email, in the silence between messages, in the way they say no, in the decision to not launch, in how they pause to recover before they collapse. They understand your invisible integrity builds visible empires. And that is the core of leadership under pressure, not being louder, but being truer. This is millionaire thinking in fire. Clear, fast, calm, ruthless, precise, grounded, decisive. You don't wait to learn it in crisis. You train it now so that when the fire comes, you walk through it clean and come out sharper than ever. Block 8. Silence is strategy. Wise stillness is a thinking ground of the millionaire mind. There's a secret to how millionaires think that rarely gets spoken out loud. It's not in their morning routine. It's not in their negotiation tactics. It's not in how they scale teams or launch offers. It's this. They think in silence. They build in stillness. They receive in spaces others run from. This is not about meditation trends or self-care. This is about mental sovereignty, the kind that creates wealth not through force, but through frequency. You see, the average person is addicted to movement, to input, to reaction, to proving. But the millionaire has broken that cycle because they know when you're full of noise, you cannot hear instruction. And wealth, the kind that lasts, does not scream. It whispers. It nudges. It arrives in clarity too subtle for the rushed mind to perceive. So the millionaire creates space, not occasionally, ritually, space between decision and reaction, space between projects, space before launches, space inside the calendar, space inside the self. They don't fear emptiness. They protect it because they know emptiness is where genius lands. Let's be clear, this is not laziness. This is discipline at the highest level. It takes more courage to sit in stillness than to stay busy, more power to hold without rushing, more mastery to refine an idea over time than to push it into the world unbaked. This is how they move, with rhythm, with breath, with a sense of time that feels ancient, not reactive. They do not lead from urgency. They lead from a slow, rooted certainty that cannot be outsourced or faked. In that stillness, they ask better questions. What truth have I been avoiding? Where is effort compensating for lack of clarity? What is trying to emerge if I stop forcing outcomes? What's the next aligned step, not the next dopamine hit? And in the asking, something sacred happens. The noise dies, the illusion dissolves, and the signal of vision becomes clear again. That signal doesn't come from comparison. It comes from alignment. And alignment only speaks when the mind is quiet enough to hear. This is why millionaires take long walks, sit in silence, go off-grid, leave space on their calendar, pause before speaking, breathe before launching. They don't do this because they're lost. They do it because clarity is more profitable than speed. And the mind cannot hold clarity when it's drowning in constant noise. Here's the paradox. Stillness looks like nothing is happening. But in truth, it's where everything is happening. It's where the next idea incubates, where strategy sharpens, where grief clears, where resistance is named, where true direction whispers its name. And without this space, the millionaire would build fast but hollow, grow wide but fragile, succeed publicly but collapse privately. So they hold silence like an altar, not as escape, but as strategy. This is what creates elegant growth, not rushed, not forced, not scattered, but clean, refined, inevitable. In that silence, they remember who they are, and from that remembrance, every move gains weight. Their words carry more gravity. Their launches feel effortless. Their leadership softens and strengthens simultaneously. Their presence becomes magnetic because silence doesn't make them disappear. It makes them undeniable. So the real question is not, what else should I do? The real question is, where do I need to stop so I can finally hear what matters? Because the most powerful thoughts, the ones that reshape industries, redefine futures, and rewire destinies, do not arise from hustle. They rise from stillness, from solitude, from slowness. And those who master the art of silence are the ones the world listens to when they finally speak. Block 9, Exit Intelligence. How millionaires know when to cut close or walk away. There's a skill most people never develop. It's not how to start. It's not how to scale. It's how to let go with power. Because in a world obsessed with growth, few are trained to end well, but millionaires are. They've learned that sustainable expansion depends just as much on what you release as what you pursue. Because dead weight doesn't just slow you down, it distorts direction. Let's break down how they think when it's time to exit. 1. When a project stalls, objective over sentiment. Most people keep projects alive because of effort already invested. Millionaires don't. They ask, has this lost strategic alignment? Are we emotionally attached to something that no longer compounds? Is this a next-level offer or an old identity clinging for survival? They're not afraid to shut it down, not with drama, but with decisiveness, because sunk cost is not a strategy, and emotional attachment is not ROI. 2. When a team member no longer fits, culture first. They don't fire impulsively, but they don't hesitate when values misalign. They observe patterns. They initiate clean conversations. They invite change. But when the line is crossed too many times, they move, because protecting a team's emotional tone is not optional. It's survival. They know you don't just scale systems. You scale energy. And if the energy is off, the whole machine vibrates at the wrong frequency. 3. When the audience evolves, let go of old positioning. What used to sell may no longer serve. Millionaires don't cling to winning scripts. They watch audience behavior, not just engagement. They ask, are we speaking to who they were or who they're becoming? Are we selling what's easy or what's true? And they pivot boldly, rewriting offers, shifting content, repositioning brands. They don't fear losing followers. They fear staying fake. 4. When a revenue stream feels heavy, check for residue. Money can be addictive, especially from systems that no longer feel clean. So millionaires check for residue. Am I resenting the money I'm making? Am I staying because of fear, not alignment? If I started from scratch, would I build this again? If the answer is no, they cut, even if it's profitable, because profit that poisons your energy is a silent tax on your future. 5. When growth feels disconnected, pause for calibration. Scaling is seductive, but millionaires don't scale chaos. If momentum feels off, they pause, audit, re-clarify. They ask, has my clarity kept pace with my growth? Is my team clear on the mission, or just executing tasks? Is my schedule aligned, or am I reacting? They don't fear slowing down, because momentum without direction is waste. 6. When the offer isn't landing, shift or shut. Not every launch will explode. Millionaires don't blame the audience. They diagnose the thinking behind the offer. Did I assume a need that isn't real? Did I build from ego or service? Did I try to scale something that hasn't earned it? Then they shift or shut. No apology, just alignment. Because brand trust grows when you stop pushing what isn't working. 7. When a client relationship turns toxic, protect the field. Even high-ticket clients get removed. Millionaires don't tolerate revenue that damages culture. They set expectations early, hold the boundary, have the hard conversation, offer clean exits, because your business is a sacred space, and allowing energy misfits because they pay is a fast path to collapse. 8. When personal habits lag behind vision, upgrade or eliminate. Sometimes the problem isn't a system, it's a habit. Millionaires audit themselves. Is this morning routine still working, or just tradition? Is this weekly rhythm aligned, or convenient? Is this content consumption still nourishing or numbing? They cut quickly, refine relentlessly, because you don't scale to the next level, you grow into it. And that growth requires identity edits. Constantly. 9. When external noise pulls focus, retreat intentionally. A media storm, a trend wave, a competitor's rise. Most people react. Millionaires go inward. They pull attention from the external, rebuild posture, reground the mission. They don't disappear from weakness. They retreat to preserve signal, because leadership under noise requires silent recalibration. And when they return, it's not to fight, it's to lead. 10. When it's time to close a chapter, end clean. Endings matter. Millionaires don't just walk away. They close cycles with integrity. Final emails, gratitude messages, refunds if necessary, public statements when appropriate, internal team debriefs. They understand how you end one thing determines the energy of what begins next. So they leave nothing muddy, nothing festering, nothing leaking, because a clean end is a launch pad for clear beginnings. This is exit intelligence, not reactive quitting, not dramatic escape, but conscious closure. Millionaires don't fear endings. They use them. They engineer them. They walk away with power intact and direction purified. And that's what makes the next level inevitable. Because when you learn how to close with clarity, you'll never be stuck again. Block 10. Holding power. Why wealth is not what you earn, but what you can sustain without collapsing. You can make millions. You can build companies. You can go viral, scale fast, get attention, cash in, exit. But none of that means anything if you can't hold it. And most people can't. Because the real question is not how much you can create. It's how much you can carry without leaking, breaking, or losing yourself in the process. Wealth doesn't destroy people. Wealth exposes them. It turns up the volume on everything unhealed, unclear, and unresolved. Insecurity becomes ego. Scarcity becomes hoarding. Need for validation becomes overexposure. Control issues become micromanagement. Unprocessed shame becomes addiction to performance. Comparison becomes self-abandonment. And if your inner world is not fortified, the very thing you built will become the thing that burns you. Millionaires who last, who build legacies, not just income, know this. So they train not just for execution. They train for containment. They train to hold pressure without panic, visibility without distortion, wealth without fear, leadership without ego, abundance without guilt, because they've learned the most essential truth of wealth. Money amplifies what already lives inside you. If you haven't made peace with who you are, no amount of money will quiet the noise. It will get louder, more complex, more expensive. That's why they choose a different path. They don't just optimize funnels. They upgrade consciousness. They don't just build offers. They build nervous systems that can hold expansion. They don't just scale systems. They scale selves. They let go of the story that growth means sacrifice. They write a new one. Growth means responsibility. The responsibility to stay clean when shortcuts are available. To stay soft when pressure invites hardness. To stay aligned when opportunities tempt deviation. To stay whole when success fragments identity. This kind of wealth doesn't scream. It doesn't seek attention. It doesn't chase applause. It moves quietly like a sovereign force. Present, grounded, undeniable. You'll know it when you see it. In how they hold eye contact without aggression. In how they walk into rooms without needing to prove. In how they say no without apology. In how they rest without guilt. In how they listen more than they speak. In how they choose what not to do. In how they move with respect for their own energy. In how they leave when the season ends with grace. In how they protect their peace like it's capital. Because it is. They do this not for show, but because they've learned that power without maturity collapses. Every time, it collapses in burnout, in team erosion, in partner betrayal, in internal sabotage, in loss of self. But the mature millionaire has made a different vow. I will grow only at the speed that my soul can hold cleanly. They don't chase what outpaces their nervous system. They don't fake urgency. They don't wear ambition like armor. They build slowly, deliberately, honestly, because to them, wealth is sacred. Not because it buys luxury, but because it reveals legacy. Not because it commands followers, but because it demands integrity. Not because it gives freedom, but because it tests what you do with it. And that test is constant. Will you still tell the truth when a lie pays better? Will you still rest when the world rewards burnout? Will you still lead when no one claps? Will you still let go when staying would be easier? Will you still think slowly in a culture that demands speed? These are not theoretical questions. They are daily altars where you meet yourself. And the millionaire who passes these tests quietly, privately, with no applause, build a reality that money cannot touch. Because now, the wealth is not just in their account. It's in their choices, in their tone, in their schedule, in their posture, in their presence, in their relationships, in their silence. They no longer chase wealth. They carry it cleanly, calmly, powerfully, and the world feels it without needing it to be said. So the real goal isn't to get rich. It's to become someone who can hold wealth with clarity, with reverence, with strength that doesn't shake. Someone who leads by energy, not noise. Someone who builds from truth, not trend. Someone who moves from sovereignty, not strategy. Because in the end, wealth doesn't belong to the hustler. It belongs to the one who can hold it without losing their soul. Block 11, Strategic Execution. How millionaires plan, move, and build without wasting energy. The average person starts the day asking, what do I have to do today? The millionaire starts with, what must be advanced today to compound future leverage? It's a different question. It builds a different life. Because execution for the millionaire is not about completing tasks. It's about building momentum around the right architecture. Let's break down how they move through time, not as managers, but as strategists of focus. 1. The week is not just a calendar. It's a battlefield of leverage. Before the week begins, the millionaire steps back and scans. What moves the mission? What clears friction? What builds brand equity? What makes future decisions easier? From this frame, they collapse distractions and build forward motion. They set core impact objectives, no more than 3 per week. Everything else gets filtered against those. If it doesn't multiply those objectives, it's noise. 2. Daily execution is about energy allocation, not time blocks. They don't just schedule by time. They schedule by mental bandwidth. They know deep strategy lives in early morning silence. Meetings belong in energy valleys, not peaks. Thinking deserves oxygen, not urgency. Creative work needs solitude. Tactical output gets batched. They don't fill their calendar to feel productive. They structure it to protect state. Because energy, not hours, is what drives creation. 3. Decision-making is batched, filtered, and minimal. They don't touch every decision. They design filters so most decisions never reach them. Their team knows what decisions are mine. What can you decide with a principle? What do we delay for more data? They don't babysit problems. They don't hover. They move. And they move others with clarity. 4. Delegation is a system, not a reaction. They don't just dump tasks. They design roles. They ask, what outcome must this person own? What boundaries will protect flow? What feedback rhythm ensures evolution? They don't wait for fires. They train independence before the burn. And they review delegation weekly. What do I still touch that I shouldn't? Who is ready for more ownership? What task repeated this week that should now be automated? 5. Meetings are containers of precision. No meetings without an agenda, a decision to be made, a person responsible, a time constraint, a clear outcome. They cut meetings that drift. They fire meetings that repeat. They replace meetings with asynchronous decisions wherever possible. And when they lead one, they own the tone. No rambling, no circles, no ego, just signal, just momentum. 6. Review loops are sacred, non-negotiable. They don't wait for quarterly check-ins. Every week, same time, same questions. What created the most leverage this week? What drained energy or broke process? What's still fuzzy and why? Where did I lead poorly or late? This review is not therapy. It's systemic truth exposure. And they share with trusted partners or advisors because growth without feedback is fantasy. 7. Strategic isolation is built in. They block think time every week. Not optional, not guilty, not reactive, because they know. Clarity is not downloaded from hustle. It's built in silence. In these blocks, they redefine the mission, pressure test offers, anticipate team breakdowns, realign brand tone, rethink assumptions, forecast risk. And if this time ever gets hijacked, they pay the price in fog. So they protect it like equity. 8. The month ends with a personal boardroom. Once per month. Full stop. Deep audit. They sit with the numbers, but also with the narrative behind them. Is growth congruent or forced? Are values scaling with revenue? Is the team expanding in skill and belief? What does my next evolution as a leader require? They don't just forecast. They fortify. And they exit that boardroom with a new frame, not just a to-do list. 9. Asks and opportunities are pre-decided. They don't get hijacked by incoming requests. They install a filter before the ask arrives. Does this align with my current mission? Is this a distraction wrapped in flattery? If I say yes, what do I delay or dilute? If it doesn't meet the standard, it's a no without guilt. Because real builders don't chase more. They protect focus density. 10. Recovery is a strategic input. Rest is not a reward. It's architecture maintenance. They monitor sleep, focus decay, emotional leakage, decision fatigue, relationship tension, creative dead zones. And when signals show up, they don't push harder. They rebalance capacity. Because burning out isn't noble. It's poor infrastructure management. This is how millionaires execute. From architecture, not adrenaline. From priorities, not panic. From rhythm, not rush. From clarity, not chaos. They don't just do more. They do less better. And they scale not because they're superhuman, but because their mental models eliminate waste before it starts. You want to move like them? Don't start by doing more. Start by designing how you move. Block 12. Becoming the model. Why the thinking that built wealth must now live through you. You've made it to the end. But this is not the end. Because this wasn't a video. It was a mirror, a confrontation, a whisper, a blueprint. And now, the real question appears. What will you do with what you've remembered? Not learned, remembered. Because deep down you've always known this. That you were not built to chase. You were built to lead. That you were not built to grind. you were built to design, that you were not meant to shrink in fear. You were meant to think with precision and build with power. But you forgot. You forgot because you were trained to perform, to please, to produce, to survive. And survival thinking does not create wealth. It creates exhaustion. Now you've seen something else. You've seen that millionaires are not superhuman. They are simply cleaner thinkers. They've stripped away noise. They've installed better frames. They've practiced choosing from sovereignty instead of reaction. They've made clarity their religion. And wealth came as a byproduct, not a god. This is your permission to do the same, to move from seeker to source, from learner to leader, from scattered action to intentional design, from asking how to deciding who you are, because now you know. Mental models are not tools. They are foundations. They don't just change your work. They change your voice. They change your tone. They change the rooms you enter and how you hold them. They reshape how you show up in conversations, how you design your day, how you say no, how you trust, how you pause, how you walk away, how you claim space without needing to shout. You've been restructured from the inside out, and that change, it will not be reversed. Because once you've seen what clear thinking feels like, you will not tolerate confusion again. Once you've tasted the calm of decision made from alignment, you will not return to urgency. Once you've experienced yourself as builder, not chaser, the game changes forever. And now it's your turn, not to mimic anyone else's path, not to repeat these lessons blindly, but to live them, to embody the standard, to move as the model, to become the architecture that others look to, not for answers, but for example, because there's a generation coming up behind you that's starving for clarity, for leadership, for integrity, for direction that doesn't scream, but radiates. And when they meet you, they won't just see what you've built. They'll feel the thinking that built it. So hold this, live this, walk this, and when it's time to speak, let your words come from the place beyond performance, from truth, from earned stillness, from conviction that is passed through fire, because that's who you are now, not a collector of mental models, but a living one, and the world is already adjusting to your new signal. Don't chase. Just move clean, move deep, move forward. It's done. Now build like it.